We've just returned from attending a very large public health conference. We hosted a booth. We engaged with our podcast listeners, our clients. We met some new people. We are going to share our takeaways, including a watch out for job seekers. You're listening to the PHEC podcast, episode 378. The field of public health is so broad, overlapping multiple industries. With epidemiology at the core of public health, there are an unlimited number of ways to target specific populations, health conditions, environmental issues, and causes that matter most to you. My name is Dr. Huntley, and I'm the host here on the Public Health Epidemiology Conversations podcast. I'm an epidemiologist, consultant, and entrepreneur with over 20 years of experience in healthcare and public health. On this podcast, my guests and I engage in conversations that demonstrate the importance of public health and epidemiology across a variety of industries, helping you think outside the box and inspire greater positive impact in communities around the world. Now, let's dive into the topic of this brand new episode. Greetings, everyone, and thank you for joining us on this episode. We actually have video on this time, which we have to do more of that. We kind of do it sometimes, all the time with guests, but not so much when it's just me or with the team. So it's good to be back in front of the mic and back at home. Laura's with me on this episode. Hey, Laura, how are you?
Hi, everybody. It's good to be back.
Yeah, we're recording this early November, so we are referring to returning back from the American Public Health Association's annual meeting. We attended the conference in Minneapolis, and we were there for a good week because we had a booth this year at the conference. So we got there early to set up our booth, and then, well, Laura, you have family there, so you stayed a little bit of time extra at the end of the conference to spend time with your family. But it's been a very full week, and we are going to just take a little bit of time to debrief briefly and share a few takeaways. I think it'll be helpful. And it doesn't matter if you were at APHA or not. It's not specific to APHA. I think what we're going to talk about is going to be helpful for any large conference that you plan to attend. And, whether you are that professional in the industry or maybe you are a leader in your organization is looking to host a booth at an exhibit hall of one of these large conferences. Maybe you've done it before or you're considering it. We want to share a few things that I think you will find helpful. For us, it was the first time that we've had a booth at a large conference like this. And really, I think I've done something on a very small scale in the past, a long time ago. But we really had a pretty significant setup, I think, for the booth this time. So we're just going to talk about a few of those things just to be clear, because some of you may be tuning in for the very first time or you may be very new to the podcast. Again, my name is Dr. Charlotte Huntley and I'm the host. And Laura is our operations manager. So she is over the organization. She oversees all of our programs on the high level and really our whole team. So if I say often, Laura's my number two person. Really and truly, my husband jokes and says, Laura's my boss. I'll plan to do something. It's like, have you checked with Laura yet? But I know that during our time of crisis, we lost our son. Laura's role was one of the things that we did extremely well. And Laura, your position and time in the company, and I mean, you've been with us for 5 years, part-time before you became full-time. So you really did run everything while we were trying to figure everything else out. So I really appreciate you and all that you do. And honestly, we're still trying to figure things out, but
yeah, it's a team effort though.
Yes.
Team effort.
Yes. So we had already committed to the booth and attending Minneapolis before my son's accident. So it was one of those things that it was enough pressure, not in a bad way, but enough to get me up out of the chair and get me moving and working and striving for the thing that we had already invested in doing. So I'm really grateful for the timing in terms of having had that commitment and a reason to kind of keep pushing through. So we lead a public health epidemiology consulting organization, a company, firm, and we support large nonprofit organizations, specifically BIPOC serving organizations. and some program leads within state organizations. We're very passionate about serving Black, Indigenous people of color, the BIPOC community. So we provide our services in a way that helps our clients communicate their data, their health information to the clients and the communities that they serve in plain language. We want to make sure that people are able to understand the information and be able to make good informed decisions about their own health. So that is what we do kind of in a nutshell. When we planned to attend the conference, we had a couple of goals. So I'll kind of start there, jumping into it. This is a bit of an informal conversation, but we do have some notes on the side to kind of help us stay aligned. But we wanted to make sure that for us, it was about relationships, right? We wanted to connect with new people and introduce them to our services and see if there are opportunities to serve new clients, and also reconnect with a lot of our clients who were also had booths at the conference. And then our podcast audience and listeners, we wanted to make sure that we were able to connect with folks that have been guests on the podcast or people who listen to the podcast. That was a main focus. Did it help, Laura? Was it helpful? Do you think that for having a goal going into the conference, especially a conference this large, do you think that was helpful to kind of, for me, recentering and remember, okay, well, this is what we're focused on doing. So being able to kind of make a decision about where to go or what to do. I'm curious, did you think that was helpful?
I did think that was helpful because I think it just kind of helps you guide the conversations that you're having, or just kind of know what type of conversation you're having when you would meet someone, or if they approached you or, myself at the booth. Like, the goal is to obviously introduce the company and kind of what we do, but just adding that special touch because we know the goal is relationship building and just kind of getting to know who our audience is and who was interested in us. It's just genuinely being curious and just having a conversation with them was very helpful.
Yeah. We also had another team member, Amber, joined us. She oversees all of the program that supports public health entrepreneurs and that second podcast that we have. So it was great to have, basically Laura and Amber were attending the booth and I was popping in and out. It was really a great experience from that, building relationships, really connecting with people in that sense. So we have about 3 points that we're going to kind of move through in this episode. We're going to talk about some of our takeaways, some especially the unexpected takeaways, we didn't surprises. We'll talk about a few things that we would do differently. And then we have a recommendation at the end. And this is, I think, it's specifically for students, but it's for all of us who engage or interact with students. Something that we noticed that was really obvious. And we want to see if we can kind of share a little bit of that with all of you so that we can help correct it, make it better, improve it, I should say. So let's start with some main takeaways. We have them as unexpected takeaways. So, Laura, what would you say about main takeaway from, or maybe unexpected takeaway from the conference?
For me, it was something that now, when I think back, it should have been obvious, but I can't stress note-taking enough. I just kind of how we've talked, like we knew relationship building and following up and all of that, but realizing how busy your day is and that how many people would approach you at the booth, I found it important that, I started taking notes on who I met, what we talked about, anything to help me remember the conversation later, and then help connect once you kind of get settled and after the conference. It just kind of helped to have all that. So for me, it was having my actual laptop handy so I could keep my list there and just build it there, and it would stay where I could find it easily after the conference rather than scurrying to find my notebook or my pen and then losing that during travel. It was just all in one place. So that was huge. And one thing that I will never do without at any other conference.
I appreciate that you and Amber came up with that on your own. I mean, you both are very organized and very resourceful, and you realized really quickly in that first day. And I'm glad you both travel with your laptops. And I like that this is not a plug for Apple at all, but we do use Apple. I have Macs in my office, and then we all have MacBooks to travel with. And there's a lot of intuitive things that happen when you're sharing across Macs. So we were able to share photos that we were taking by airdropping, and just made it a little seamless. I guess this is a good problem to have. We had a lot of traffic at our booth.
We did.
I don't know how you felt about this. I know this is the very first time for you being in person at the conference. Amber had been there once before attending, but of course we hadn't had the booth. I'm used to people coming up to me and saying, "Oh, listen to your podcast," in such a good way. It never gets old for me. It humanizes everything, because when you have something like a podcast and it's in this digital space, when I meet someone who listens and I get to hug them and talk to them and they're physically in front of me, it humanizes the whole process. And we had so many people stopping by the booth. And I had a goal, a personal goal, of every person that wanted to take a photo with me, I wanted to take a photo with them. If they stopped by and shared their experience with me, I was very open to that. And I was just being very present with people as they came through. And you're right, it's hard to keep up with all the moments, but I wanted to. It's important. That's a part of that relationship building. And so you all did a great job of synchronizing that and capturing those notes and the details so that we could have that meaningful follow-up. Did you expect there to be as much traffic as we received?
There was a lot of traffic. I don't think it was as steady as I expected it to be, but all positive. So for me, I like to stay busy and meet people, and I kind of have a similar feeling as you. It's fun to meet the listeners in person and just what they take away from the podcast. And then it's also fun to meet people who are new and just learning about it. It's just a whole different experience, meeting all different people in the industry or students, and just kind of having a conversation with them and seeing how we connect and what interests them and how we've helped or how we can help. It's all just there's a lot, but it's all fun.
Yeah, we had a lot of traffic the first day, and then the second day was a little quiet, and then it was really busy the third day.
Yeah, it was, but all good. So
yeah, I will add here that just as we were taking notes, and it's important to try to keep up with who you're meeting, especially those people you want to be, it's for follow-up purposes. One of the things that I would add here is when you reach out, and everybody kind of knows this, but when you get ready to do it, it doesn't flow as naturally. When you reach out, you want to remind the person of how you met or something that will help connect with them. So when you start to follow up and you reach out and you say, "Oh, I met you at APHA," that doesn't help, because once we get back home, that person's like, "Okay, well, I met a lot of people at APHA," or, "I loved your talk," or "We talked about," like, make it personal and help that person remember what it was about the conversation, or help trigger their mind. So a couple of people have done this with me so far. Someone reached out via email, and they had stopped at our booth, and they even said in the email, "I know that, you probably talked to a lot of people, so let me help you remember." And they went into more specific things about their engagement with me, which I thought was really nice. That's a nice touch. And that's something I actually have been doing with new people that I've reached out with. If you already know the person, you're reconnecting, they're going to remember you, right? But if it's someone brand new, and it's easy to just kind of forget about the detail because they're not familiar. So I've been doing that. But then also another example, someone reached out to me on LinkedIn to follow up, and they actually included the photo that we took together in their follow-up, and then also started adding some details. So that was because sometimes I find myself going through all the photos in my phone, and I'll remember taking the photo and I'll remember the face, but I struggle to remember a little detail about it. So having that little extra detail is super helpful as well. So I don't think anybody minds. I don't know if you think to do it or not. You think, "Oh, that could be too much." I think it's actually helpful. The one time I did that with another woman who actually suffers from long haul COVID, and part of the symptoms she has is the foggy brain and hard to remember things. And so she appreciated that I thought to include the details of our conversations and so forth. She really appreciated that. So I think that as you follow up with people after any large conference, any big or small conference you attend, when you're following up, include anything that can help them remember the moment so that you can continue the relationship. So that's just a really good, maybe overall takeaway in that aspect, that we just didn't think about. We knew to do this, but it just kind of hit a little differently this time.
Yeah, and I think that adding that personal touch or just triggering what might help someone remember the conversation to me makes that everything seem that much more personal and genuine. So I think it just kind of, if I were to receive be on the receiving end of something like that, I would appreciate all of those things.
Yeah, it does. It helps you, you know that you stood out enough to that person. So that's really, I think it's all good to do that.
Yeah.
Another thing, we had kind of an unexpected problem because I've never ever had this problem before, but we actually ran out of business cards.
Yeah.
Which is like, you think usually you order, your business cards, you have them forever, but we ran out of them. People were asking, they really wanted them. So kind of two parts of this, because we really noticed the need for the digital card as well as the need for having adequate amount of physical cards. So before we left for the conference, the team and I talked about a lot of the digital cards that are being used now. And we got some recommendations and we decided to use one. So I set mine up, and I think we kind of dropped the ball on following up on that. So the team, Amber and Laura didn't really have their setup, and that would have been really helpful to have. I did meet a few people. In fact, that reminds me to go back into the app, and sometimes you connect and you send and share cards, and you can add little notes about the person, and I have a few connections through the digital app that I want to follow up with. The watch out for that one is just making sure you're picking a good digital card so it doesn't force the connection to go straight to your personal contacts, because not everyone wants them in their personal contacts. But that's something that we will use in the future. Make sure the team is set up with a digital card as well as having physical cards.
Yeah, and I do think too, we realized that the importance of taking advantage of the tools that the conference may have too, because I believe APHA had their app, but they had a way where you could connect and kind of do something similar, or at least what we liked is you could find somebody you met with and add notes all within that app. So it's like if you didn't have a digital card, you could at least, use something like that if the conference you're attending has something similar.
Yeah, I think that's a great point too, because sometimes you may be in a session and maybe there's like a roundtable discussion. I found this a few times, and maybe the speaker says something that really resonates with you, and you decide, I really want to connect with them. You can add notes about that person in the conference app. And then when you follow up later, you'll remember. It helps you to just remember that, so that when you do reach out for that initial connection, you'll have something personal, a way to personalize it, something they said and how it made you feel, or how it resonated with you. These are just tools that make it a little easier to have those genuine follow-up, to build those connections, which is what we're all looking to do, wherever you are, whether it's with your business. If your business, your organization that you work for is going to have a booth there and you're going to work at the booth, that's a big part of why they're having that, is connect with people. So ways that you can easily follow up and have that information. As professionals, we should always stay connected and look for new people that we want to connect with and start new relationships or strengthen those existing ones as well.
Yeah, and I think LinkedIn, we always preach LinkedIn here, but I did find it beneficial also that there were some people that would come up, and if we could instantly find them and just connect on LinkedIn, and then I think even leveling up one, send them a quick message, about like almost using that as your note so you both have it, at the end of the conference. That is also a good resource to have.
Absolutely. I did that a few times myself, and a few people did that as well. I love it because it's right there. You know how we get busy, distracted, but it's right there in your message history, and that's perfect. Sometimes I get ready to message someone and I realize, oh, we had a conversation. I met someone in person who last year at a big conference, we missed each other. And so this time we were able to finally meet in person. So that was nice too. So it's nice to have these are several options, but I think a mixture of the physical cards and some digital way of keeping in touch is a good combination.
Mm-hmm. And again, all key for networking.
Yes.
Definitely helpful at conferences, but I think you could use this anywhere, meeting anyone new in a professional setting.
Yeah. So what are some things we would do differently?
Well, definitely more business cards, physical business cards. Because we were towards the end trying to be picky about how many we would set out after a while or pass out.
Yeah, we ration them out.
Yeah. But one thing that stood out to me was, again, tying back to LinkedIn, I thought it would be beneficial to have a quick and easy way for people to connect. So, for instance, having a QR code on display straight to the page, because a lot of people would ask, how can I find you, connect? So I think that would be easy, just to have a quick scan and go, link up, and then everyone would have access quickly and you wouldn't miss that connection.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I'm surprised we didn't think about that for as much as we talk about LinkedIn. But we had like the QR codes for the podcast, and we tried not to have too much stuff, more streamlined, but that's something we would do differently. We would make sure to have, because we had the little stands with some like a flyer in, so we could easily have a stand on our table and have a QR code that connects people, takes them straight to our LinkedIn, and they can just follow us. And that was definitely an ask. We wanted people to be able to do that. And since they were bringing it up, would have been a great opportunity. So something we'll keep in mind for next time. An easy way for people to connect with the organization where we want them to go.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, we kind of tie this up. Let's talk about that recommendation for students. I'm going to let you explain, because you and Amber both noticed this. I noticed it too, but let's talk about it. What was rising up? What did you notice?
So we noticed students that would approach us. It was very clear that they're job searching and wanting to know if we're hiring. And some were very adamant, which I fully understand that drive and the motivation. But however, being on the other end of the booth, I think it's important really for both ends, but to be open-minded to the opportunity and almost using it as a chance to, if you're a student looking for a job, to get to know the company more rather than just instantly, are you hiring? Where can I apply? So almost like interviewing the company themselves and getting to know and make sure it fully, follows what you believe in and what you want to do, and make sure that's the path you want to go. And also to take the time to explore different companies and something you would have never thought of, just a different way to consider different places. And a conference is a great place to do that because they're full of opportunity. So again, not only would you be gaining networking and meeting new people, but also getting a better understanding of some of the companies that are there and what they represent and what they stand for. And then from there, deciding, is that someplace you'd want to end up, and maybe follow up from there and make it more personable. Are you hiring? And, use that network connection you made and go from there.
Yes, I liked hearing from you and Amber, and you did a good job of kind of summarizing both of your points and what you both noticed. The reason I added this in for us to discuss here is because on this podcast, I know a lot of students listen to this podcast. I also know a lot of professionals in academia who are mentoring and coaching and getting these students ready for the field, teaching them how to go out and look for jobs, are listening to this podcast. And then a lot of organizations that are hiring people and go through, on the other side of that, listen. And I think this is an opportunity for us to help students and the job seekers with kind of a watch out. So I think that I use the phrase humanizing. We hear that a lot lately. I think that's relevant here. We need to humanize this process. I can appreciate the energy, the eagerness, the enthusiasm going after the job. And a lot of booths had signs, we're hiring, apply for, and it's wonderful to see that. But I think there's a point when the student just leads with the stress. It's almost like I've got to get my resumes out. It doesn't matter what, I've just got to get 10 of these out. I'm going to shove this in your face kind of thing. When they lead with that stress, it's really obvious. And unfortunately, it's a missed opportunity because you honestly don't know who's at the booth, what role they play in the decision making or the hiring process. The missed opportunity to, like you said, Laura, learn about the organization, show some genuine interest. I rarely saw that. Not every candidate's like that, but I rarely saw that, leading with that genuine interest, because that's a mutual process. You are looking to know more about that organization. And when you show interest in that organization, that stands out. And I literally watched one of our clients is in the process of hiring. At their booth, they had a sign that they were hiring. So I was standing there talking with the person running the booth, who is not one of the leadership members that's very visible elsewhere, but I know her role. She's one of those really strong behind the scenes people. And I watched a couple of students come up to the booth, and they were just like, what's in it for me type of thing. They never showed any interest in the organization, wanting to learn about it. It was very transactional. And I felt bad because they had no idea the person that they were talking to or kind of blowing off and ignoring was a person that makes the decision about whether or not those resumes or applications move to the next stage. So it's really unfortunate when to lead with the stress. So I think it's just however you interact with students, encourage them to humanize this process and remind them that they never know who they're crossing paths with. And also remind them that it's important to learn, be curious, and learn about the organizations and what they do. They may or may not be really truly interested in applying there or the job if it was offered to them. But learning more will never cause any harm, and it could gain an important connection. Sometimes even if they're not interested in that role, if they're just nice enough and genuine enough, connecting with people, it opens other doors. Sometimes they'll refer you. This particular client, I know that they actually look at all their applications. If someone applies for something and say the evaluation side of things, but they could be a good fit for epidemiology, they will refer them to the people who are looking to hire the epidemiologist. So some of these organizations are really looking for the right fit. So it goes beyond what's on your resume. The other thing I saw was a lot of people just shoving their resumes out, almost with an attitude, like, just take this. I need to get my resume out. Like, somebody told me I have to get my resume out. So they're shoving them in the faces of people that may or may not be interested in their resume. If that organization is not hiring at the time, but you come in and you build a relationship and you have a good conversation, they may want to keep your information for the time when they are hiring. But if you just lead with shoving it in their face, then they may or may not even look at that. Even if they're interested in you on paper, they're going to remember that kind of attitude and think about, is this a good fit for the workplace? So encourage students, job seekers, to kind of revisit this process as they're looking for jobs at conferences. I think it's a wonderful opportunity, but you have to be in the right. I mean, if you're tired and stressed, take a break. Get fresh before you go out handing your resumes out again. That's just a recommendation. So if you are, we have so many shortages in public health and we have such a need. If you work with students in any level, please share some of this with them and help them prepare better for those opportunities when they're at conferences.
Yeah. And I think with that, one thing I would also recommend is if you are, looking, you're a student or, again, a job seeker, talk to these people, get to know the company, what they do, if it's a good fit. Then once you decide, send that follow-up email or message to the connection that you made. Thank them for their time, remind them what you talked about, and then add your resume in there. It's just another way to personalize it, build the relationship, network, and then hopefully have a job lined up afterwards. Because at the end, I feel like you're networking and it all kind of comes back to knowing and talking to the right person at the right time and just presenting yourself in a calm, professional manner and just giving off that genuine interest that that's somewhere you would want to be.
Yeah. We had somebody do that exact thing with us. We met them at the booth. They had like a little flyer, like a one-pager about themselves. And then they followed up via email and shared their CV, their resume with us. And yeah, it's a much nicer approach. It feels more natural. And they were referred to our booth from someone else. So it's just some recommendations for our job seekers that are pursuing opportunities in public health. So yeah, I think there's a lot we could continue to talk about, but this is a good stopping point. We had some great takeaways. Again, yes, we're specifically talking about our time with APHA, but this applies to any conference that you plan to attend, large or small. I think that some of these takeaways can be helpful for you. We are excited to be back home, still trying to rest and recover. By the time you hear this episode, hopefully we'll be back into the swing of things. But thank you, Laura, for taking some time and joining me to help share takeaways on this episode.
Yeah, it was fun. It's fun to recap, like you said, kind of getting home and get settled. Then you kind of have a more clear thinking process to kind of go back and really take it all in.
Yeah, we'll be kind of debriefing and going through notes and things for quite a while. And so much more to still learn from this overall process of the booth, with all of our booth equipment still in transit back to the office here. So waiting for that to return back to us and preparing for the next conference in booth that we will set up. So it's been great experience. All right, everyone. Until next time, have a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you for listening to the Public Health Epidemiology Conversations podcast. Visit phecpodcast.com to find the show notes for each episode and to learn how to work with me.